Hello, this week we're talking about quilts that I just took off the frame. I'll tell the little story about them and the stitch I did. This is a 2019 temperature quilt. Each hexagon flower here represents 1 week of the high temperature in my county. I stopped at 8 or 9 months because all the colors started to be the same, blue. I found this great batik in my stash to go with it. I used a few hexagon filler hexes to make the flowers join together. This is my first English paper piecing project, so the hexagons are sewn by hand. Then I appliqued them on border strips. I just did a all over swirl pattern that you can see, and I think it turned out great. It kind of gives me a universe feel, like the hexagons are floating in the universe. I really enjoyed this project. I learned a lot on this project, and I'm very proud that I finished it. It took me 2 years for this small table runner size or wall hanging, but I'm okay with that. I am bitten by the English paper piecing bug, and I am working on more. On to the next quilt. This is an Orphan black quilt. It's pretty large, and I'm going to scan over it. I used to do a lot of testing for Quilt Makers 100 block, as well as just making, blocks because I'm testing a pattern. The little 6-inch, those are left over from a couple different projects, including the Farmer's Wife, and I didn't finish that project. There's a couple from the Civil War diary quilt. That's where I learned how to paper piece. This drink pattern, I did a quilt for Quilt Maker magazine, and the rest of them are ideas or different types of quilts, blocks, different quilts that I did for other people. This book is from Book Nerd. That is a pattern that's still available. This layout, oh boy, this squeaking, sorry about that. This layout is from Quilting Jet Girl, which is circle quilt, and I filled the center with these checkerboard 6-inch blocks, and the math lined up perfectly to go with the 12.5-inch blocks. This block here is from Fat Quarter Shop using one of their rulers. So let's do a larger overview. And let's see, again, this quilt, I did a all over flower pattern with a swirl and a vine. Let's see what I did next. This quilt is from a K-Facet layer cake. I added the blues in for the top, and this was a pattern that was a free pattern going around the internet. Just Google pineapple. This is one you'll find. I made it longer so it'll go on the back of my couch, and I love these colors. They're some of my favorite. Let's zoom in on the vertical patterns. I did a feather up and down in the pineapple and a swirl in the white columns. But what I did to show off the quilting, which I often do, is I love the back better than the front because you can see, look at all those quilting stitches. Yes, I really love this quilt too. This is a trip around the world quilt. I followed a pattern on YouTube on how to do it in strips. I did this in the pandemic during lockdown days. I love this collection of batiks that I found. I inherited a friend's stash after she passed, And she had a lot of her friends' stash after she passed. And this collection of batiks was in the stash. You can see I chose to do spirals in the blue. And then I did all over curls. And then I did this flower pattern in the purples. And in the very center, I did like an asterisk. So it was custom, what I call custom light. This is all over stitches that I use quite often. It was a great practice piece, but doesn't interfere with the overall piecing. And I didn't use a bright colored thread because I didn't want to lose that diamond shape with the pink and purple. Well, let's see what we have next. This is Pat Sloan's Traffic Jam free pattern on her website. I love the fact that the white and the square with the tiny red square in the middle really stands out, the negative space pattern, with all of these scraps. Some of it is a couple different collections that I've mashed up together, and I did an overall swirl pattern. Super easy, would be a great leader ender quilt, and I just love it. It's a great size, almost twin. And let me just kind of go down. I put a border on it with a cute little heart. It's white with heart prints on it. And you can see the all over swirl pattern. And the back really shows the swirl stitching standing out on the navy blue and gold polka dot pattern fabric that I found. Oh, I got a couple more. This quilt is bonus blocks that came from an arrow pattern that I did for Moda Bake Shop with the same shibori fabric. If you like shibori, Debbie Maddie came out with a new Moda shibori line this spring. Now, this particular quilt was a beautiful quilt. I love it so much. And this is like a small version of it. You can see I did swirls in the blue and then a squiggle pattern in the white panes. Overall, it's a wall hanging size, and I just love it because it's a small version I can take to work. And it has, I like the blue and white with the contrast, and the fabric is really cool, and this quilt pattern I think shows it off pretty well. Okay, one more. I want to end on this little pineapple. It's the last one I took off the frame. You can tell I was kind of digging through my Orphan blocks, things that I made during the pandemic, and this is my oldest top. It's over 10 years old. I bought it as a kit. The colors on it are fabulous. Doesn't show great in the far shot, but close up you can see it's got rose theme with pinks and reds with a teeny bit of yellow. Oh my gosh, it's really a pretty quilt. And why did it take me so long? Well, this is the foundation that I learned how to do foundation piecing, but the foundation isn't paper, it's muslin underneath, and it's really thick with all those seams. I didn't have enough skill on my long arm or enough practice, so I was afraid to do it and have it break my machine. The other part of this was I wasn't sure if I liked it enough to try to finish it. Well, I did. I love it. I found a great back, and it is an all over swirl. When you have something with all these seams and all of these different weights, just a simple all over pattern. There, we get the sun on those pretty flowers. You know, really, you don't want to be doing something too fancy. Otherwise, you're going to quilt this half to death. With all those layers is hard. But let me tell you, it turned out great. I love how it turned out. And this is definitely going on the table. So I have quite a few to bind. Now, this is the sad part, right? Why do I always get this quilting done in the winter? And when the days are hot, now we have a stack of quilts to bind. But I couldn't be more thrilled with being so productive over the last few months quilting my own quilts. So I hope you found some of these inspiring. Try a few scrap quilts, look up a few free patterns, and just know if you sew or you work on something 15 minutes a day, you'll get it together, you'll get the blocks together, you'll get the quilt done one stitch, one block, one row at a time. Quilt on, everyone!